Hi, I'm Mike Ravalin. I'm the BASF rep for Hawaii and the Central Coast of California. So I specialize in a lot of the small crops. I'm going to present to you today on using Priaxor for CLR management. We'll review the chemistry, the new labeling, and the best usage guidelines. I'd like to thank Andrea and Matt for inviting me to speak to you. Today we want to cover kind of the coffee labeling changes for Priaxor fungicide. I'll give you an explanation of the active ingredients. We'll talk about timing and usage for best results. We'll talk about plant health, which is a side benefit of pyraclostrobin, which is one of the active ingredients in Priaxor. And we'll talk about the importance of spray coverage. What's important to me is that you're able to get good control of the disease, which I think Priaxor definitely allows. But more importantly, you're able to get a good return on your investment. And since yield is how you get paid, more pounds of coffee equals more dollars in your pocket, I think you'll be happy with the benefits of this product. It's very fairly priced in the market and does a good job at protecting your yield and maybe even increasing your yield. We'll start with CLR's history and Priaxor's fit. In 2020, CLR first got detected in a few spots on the islands or on certain islands. Currently, it's on all of the islands. The results of that were really areas of reduced yield, defoliation, and in some cases, some infected wood, because if you let it go long enough, the CLR will actually kill your trees. We were able to get a Section 18 for Priaxor in May of 2021. It was a really good joint effort between the Hawaii Department of Ag, the different coffee associations, the university, and BASF. So we're really happy to get that. Luckily, we've improved upon that. So now in 2024, we have that converted from a Section 18 to a supplemental label. The big benefit of that is that you no longer will have to treat the Priaxor as a restricted use pesticide. You won't have to do the notice of intent, and you won't be open to additional inspections because you signed up to use it. So as a supplemental label, you're relieved from that additional paperwork. That's one of the biggest benefits. Some things that have not changed since the Section 18 are the reentry interval, which is 12 hours, the pre-harvest interval, which is 45 days, the maximum number of applications, which is 2 per year, the rate that we use, which is 7.14 ounces per acre, and please stay at that rate, it's very important, and the minimum amount of water you can use per acre, which is at 20. Now on water, I really want you to use whatever water it takes to get good coverage of the tree. So I think 20 is a little low. I think you really need to be somewhere in the 75 to 100 gallon range. So to get good coverage, it takes water and slow speed and a good clean rig, but please get your equipment dialed in to get the best application possible. If we look specifically at the supplemental label, you'll see the two chemicals up at the top, fluxapyroxid and pyraclostrobin. They're both fungicides. They're both very active on coffee leaf rust. What's important about the supplemental label is that you have it in your hand at the time of application. So who's ever doing the application needs to have this label and the label on the bottle available at all times. If you don't have it, you could be liable for a citation or maybe even a fine. You must have this label with you at all times. One of the other changes that applicators and what they must wear is personal protective equipment. It's very minimal because these products are both very safe to humans. So really you just need to have a long sleeve shirt, long pants, shoes and socks, and chemical resistant gloves that are made of nitrile or neoprene and a certain thickness. So very minimal requirements for safety because both these products are very safe. Again, the rate will be 7.14 ounces. Please stay at that rate. The most you can use this is twice per year, and you do have a 45-day to harvest interval. Some people ask about that. It's because Priaxor has such a good residual in the plant that we can still detect trace amounts really for up to 45 days. So there's a lot of science behind that. It's not just a random number. You need to adhere to that number. One of the things we really fought hard to keep with EPA when we moved to a supplemental label is this mechanically pressured backpack sprayer. So you may use mechanically pressured backpack sprayers. However, blowers and misters are not allowed. So make sure you're using a mechanically pressured backpack sprayer. As far as adjuvants, you can now tank mix Priaxor with some other products. The adjuvants are still limited to non-ionic and organosilicone surfactants. I prefer organosilicons at the lowest rate. You cannot mix this product with emulsifiable concentrates, and that's important because they have a solvent in them, and that solvent will penetrate the product, our product, Priaxor, too fast. So no ECs. The one EC that is commonly used in coffee is Botanigard. So you may not mix this with Botanigard. That has to be a separate application. Also, you cannot mix it with crop oil concentrates or methylated seed oils or any adjuvants containing those products. So no oils, no solvents. We don't want to penetrate it in too fast. Another requirement that came up on the supplemental was the minimum retreatment interval. It's 30 days, but I don't really want you to use it that close together anyway, so that should not be a problem. But just in case, no minimum retreatment. It's more than 30 days. I like to think of our fungicides as kind of building blocks, and why I say that is they're usually a combination of products, and we put them together in certain ratios for certain reasons for certain crops. In Priaxor, the building block is pyraclostrobin. So pyraclostrobin is a chemical that's about 20 years old on the market, a lot of testing, very safe, and we market it as Headline and Cabrio. We mix that with a product called flexipyroxid. That's a newer chemical, only about 10 years on the market. We market that straight as Tesaris. But for coffee, what is really important is the mixture of the two in the ratio. So Priaxor is a 2-to-1 ratio of pyraclostrobin to flexipyroxid, and that'll give you the best chance at controlling CLR. So if we look at those components individually, you'll see that pyraclostrobin is part of the strobilurin chemistry family, and we call those FRAC 11s. It is a locally systemic product, which is sometimes called a translaminar product. It moves from the top of the leaf to the bottom of the leaf, and if you spray a droplet on, it may cover a little bit wider of an area, but it just really moves into the tissue and not very far from where that spray droplet is. So coverage is critical. It creates a barrier in the leaf surface that the fungus can't grow into. It has very good efficacy on CLR and a lot of other diseases. This is a very widely used type of chemistry in the world. It works at a single site of action, which is important because that, if we're not careful, can create resistance. So we want to make sure the rotation and the space between treatments of Priaxor are good. We don't want less than 30 days between. And we also want another chemical in the middle. It works to stop energy production in the fungus. So it stops energy production in the fungus at one specific spot. Additionally, we have plant health benefits. We'll describe those in a bit, but keep that in the back of your mind for now. Here's a good picture. It's an electron microscope picture of two chemicals. The one on your left is a contact fungicide. It is not systemic. And what you see is the leaf up close, actually a stomata in the middle, so that's how the leaf breathes, and the chemical on top of the leaf. What you see on the right is the locally systemic or translaminar or even a xylem systemic product as it's absorbed into the leaf. So the difference is a layer on top. Copper would be a good example, or moving inside of the leaf. We mix pyraclostrobin with fluxapyroxid. Fluxapyroxid is in a different chemistry group. That's important because now we're working at two different sites of action on the fungus, so we're killing it in two places. It is xylem systemic, so on top of moving into the leaf, it's going to move upward through the leaf. Up and out is the best way to remember it. And it does this at a very slow pace, and because it has a longer residual, this is what gives you the length of control. It's in the leaf, it's moving up and out with the water stream at a very slow pace, and it's breaking down very slowly. We're still creating a barrier in the leaf surface that goes towards the leaf margins, up and out towards the leaf margins. It's very good on CLR and many other fungal diseases. Again, it works at a single site. So it's a different site than the pyraclostrobin, but it kills the fungus in one very specific way. Here's just a schematic that shows you a spray droplet on top. See that in the blue patches of a leaf surface. How it moves down into the cells of the leaf, so below the cuticle, into the upper epidermis and into the palisade layer. And then you see that tube with the arrows pointing out. Eventually what's in the leaf moves into that tube. That's where your water and nutrients are moving, also the xylem, and moves up and out of the leaf surface. Another way to look at it is that when it's absorbed, in this case through the roots, it's translocated through the xylem with the water and the minerals, and as it enters, it only moves up. So if you spray green stems, it will move up the stem and out some of the leaves, but only up and out. If you spray a leaf, it's only going to move from that leaf up to the edges and out of that leaf. That's how the product works, but I mentioned a side benefit earlier of pyraclostrobin, and we call that plant health. And if you read the Priaxor label, you will see that EPA, we submitted a ton of testing to them and got plant health labeled. So we probably have 20 years of studies, thousands of studies that show quote-unquote plant health, what we call plant health. Other people try and mimic this, but nobody else has a registration because nobody else has the data and the testing like we do. And how it works is really pretty simple. You spray Priaxor in this case, which has pyraclostrobin on it, on the plant. The plant immediately starts increasing an enzyme called nitrate reductase. that helps the plant absorb and lay down more tissue. So more nitrogen means more tissue gets made. You get bigger roots, greener leaves, stronger stems. There's a secondary effect, and that has to do with creating a product called nitric oxide in the plant, which reduces ethylene production. So we act in making more tissue, more healthy tissue, and reducing ethylene. Ethylene is one of the stress hormones, one of the death hormones, if you will, or termination hormones in plants. We reduce that, or at least we moderate it. So if we look at just the nitrate reductase and nitrogen uptake, what you'll see is we increase this by about 75%, which increases the nitrate uptake by about 48%, which increases the weight of the plant, the biomass, by about 25%. So better nitrogen uptake is more green tissue. More green tissue is more photosynthesis. More photosynthesis means more food for the plant to grow your crop. That's the nitrate uptake effect. The photosynthesis can be measured, and there's lots of ways to measure it. One popular way is a hand meter. So if you look at the untreated in light gray, another fungicide in darker gray, and us in blue, you can see we always have an effect on increased photosynthesis, even in the best of environments and conditions. Hawaii is a good environment for growing, lots of sunlight, lots of moisture, lots of photosynthesis, but we still would improve that. If you look at just root growth and you see the untreated versus the Priaxor treated, you can see where we make more root tissue. We also have some stress management effects, and I showed you that stomate earlier in the picture of the non-systemic fungicides, and you probably noticed it was closed. When stomates are closed, plants don't breathe. So we help regulate the stomates to keep the plant's stomates open, and then the plant can breathe. It can continue to respire, would be the correct word. It can continue to photosynthesize and make food. Here's a couple examples. I realize you don't really have drought stress much, but plants recovering, an almond on the left and a citrus tree in the middle, recovering from drought stress versus untreated and competitive products. Also, we allow the plant to recover from frost stress. So in this case, somebody just happened to spray one of our products that contains the same active ingredient on an almond tree before a frost. They were doing it for bloom protection, and the difference was no harvest at all on the untreated versus a 60% harvest on the treated. So in that case, we gave the person a crop where they normally would not have had any. Here's another picture of a stomate on the left, and what you'll see is we can measure the gases going in and out, and versus the untreated check, we leave that stoma open, the gases can continue to go in and out, and the picture on the upper right shows the plants in blue. This would be imagery, infrared imagery, and blue is good. Blue means cooler and photosynthesizing better. So in that small picture, there's a plant on the right. That's the one treated with the equivalent of Priaxor. And there's the plant on the left. That's the one not treated. The darker blue one is doing much better. And you can even see the effect down in the roots, where the roots are cooler and making more energy for the plant. We reduce oxidative stress. We measure that actually with a herbicide, paraquat, that kills by creating oxidative stress. And if you look, we reduce reduce the effect of that product on a plant by 57% just by helping the plant continue to breathe through the stress of that product. So we work in stress reduction that way, and we also reduce ethylene, as I mentioned before. And if you look at the untreated versus the Maravon, or even a couple other products, what you'll see is we reduce ethylene's production by the plant and keep that plant out of stress so it can still function better. And that's about a 4 times reduction. So that's a very significant reduction. I talked about yield. I don't have coffee data, but ultimately I can say it's happened in a lot of other crops. This is citrus, and what you're looking at is basically 7 years, 8 years of harvest that a grower then in the 9th year, which was 2014 and 15, started using the product that had pyraclostrobin in it. If you look at his yields, even his best ever, which was about 58, the yields when he started using pyraclostrobin were higher, in fact significantly higher. The average of the 2 yellow bars would be 65, the average of the other bars would be right around 50. So that's bins per acre. That's really about a 20% increase in yield. I would see no reason why coffee would not benefit to some degree in terms of yield. Again, just a quick little supplemental reminder that there's 2 modes of action in here. It's pyraclostrobin and fluxapyroxid. It's 7.14 ounces for coffee leaf rust, 45 days to harvest. So here's really the question. When's the best time to use it? To get to that answer, I think we need to look at really what else we have. And we have some contact fungicides, a couple biofungicides, and Priaxor. So the contact products are the copper products, or oxidate, or even oil if you happen to use that as a after pruning spray. The biofungicides are Serenade and Double Nickel. There's one other, I haven't played with it, so I won't mention it. Then there's Priaxor. So we are the only synthetic, basically man-made fungicide, 2 fungicides really, that works at a specific site of action and internally in the plant. Everything else is going to work on the outside of the plant. It's all contact except for Priaxor. So that's the chemicals. This is the fungus. And a fungus goes through a couple stages, and these are really important. So first the spore lands, then it germinates, then it penetrates, goes in through the cuticle, makes a little root, and you get some growth, a little bit of what they call mycelium in the cuticle, under the cuticle, through the cuticle. Now people ask me, is Priaxor curative? My answer is generally no. The truth is, it's curative just for the first moments that mycelium is growing. So that orange bar, just the very beginning of that. So I say no, it is not, because in coffee leaf rust that happens so fast. So even Priaxor, as good as it is for your disease, we're using this preventatively. And when I say preventative, it'd be great if we were always spraying a clean coffee plant that had no spores on it whatsoever, but we're generally not. So curative can be stopping it from spreading to other leaves or other parts of the tissue or the tree. We're not going to go back and knock the infection out of the leaf that's already got a new pustule on it. Lastly, we need to look at the disease and how quick, how aggressive it is. It appears on the lower leaves and tips and edges. The spores really require water to germinate. So you get a little rain, that's why the rainy season's your worst, but even dew or overhead irrigation or high humidity can germinate this stuff. The germination is very, very quick. Again, that's why we're very protective, not curative. 2 to 4 hours, that is so rapid that's really a tough disease. Again, that spore will spread more in the wind and the rain and also by human contact. So picking is a big spreading time, and you need to think about it like that. When you're done picking, you need to treat with something, probably not Priaxor at that point, something else. Here's the other problem with CLR. The infection happens very quickly, 24 to 48 hours. And you would think, okay, that's bad, but I don't see the lesions really for 4 to 6 weeks. Nobody can see the lesions for 4 to 6 weeks. So by the time you see the lesions, we're way past what some people might call a curative stage. Again, that's why I call this a protectant only. Because of all the things I just kind of mentioned, I think the best time to treat is the new flush of growth. So post-pruning, no matter what your type of pruning, when you get that first flush, that's a good time to treat. The beginning of the rainy season is also a good time to treat. Then you have to go to alternate chemistries. When should you retreat? Well, there's 2 ways to go here. The first is when you're at 50% bloom. So when you think half of your crop is in bloom or past that, just not before that, that's a good time to retreat. And one of the reasons is all that yield potential and growth enhancement and stress reduction I told you about, because blooming and fruiting is very stressful. Reproduction is stressful on the plant. So that's a good time to use the second treatment. Plus you'll get really good fungicide activity with Priaxor at that time. The second time you could retreat if you didn't want to use the bloom spray would be 45 days to harvest. That's just saying we're going to go after this disease right before harvest with the best product we have. Either way, it's a win-win situation. Again, the bloom spray would be also for a potential yield increase. And either way, you'll need to retreat with alternate products afterwards, including potentially just after you pick and just after you prune, because those are times that it's really nice to knock the inoculum down. No matter what you use, please remember coverage is critical and get your spray rigs dialed in for the best possible coverage. So watch and treat as different areas flush new growth. Your alternate chemistries are pretty limited, but use them and get the best application you can. And don't let the disease get ahead of you. It's a very aggressive disease. I think the best benefit of Priaxor is you'll get very consistent performance out of it. You might get yield improvement, and you should get return on investment even if you don't, even just by using the fungicide. But the yield improvement's just hopefully additional money in your pocket. Disease control, optimized growth, and stress mitigation, that's a pretty good combination of attributes to have. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.